YouTube out of community, Beach Boys, SMiLE fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens. Today we are joined by Abigail Devoe of Vinyl Mondays on YouTube and Instagram. Abby, thanks for
Hi.
being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really stoked you want to be a part of this because your YouTube channel is so much fun. Your passion for talking about music is infectious, and the way you dive into the songs and the backstory and the people who are there, it's a lot of fun to watch. It's really, I love the enthusiasm.
Thank you
Um,
so much. I'm glad the enthusiasm translates because that's really all I want to do is get people enthusiastic about this music and continuing to interact with the history.
Absolutely. I do the same thing. It's like all this cool stuff exists and you just want to make sure it's still present. Because I feel like the 60s are always gonna be cool and present. It's just it was always was. It was never a time when
I
the 60s
hope
were
so.
dull, you know?
I hope so. I'd be sad if they weren't.
So as we're talking about SMiLE this month, I wanted to ask you what your relationship with the album is because everyone I've ever talked to, their story is different for how they first heard the album or got into it. So what's your story with the Beach Boys SMiLE?
Right. So I wanted to hop on this project you have going because I feel like I'd have an interesting perspective or an interesting relationship with SMiLE that I don't know if your other guests would bring to the table. Of course, I don't know who the other guests are, so I really can't say that much. Um, I was exposed to SMiLE sessions before Brian Wilson presents SMiLE.
Cool.
I sort of had that reverse relationship with it. Somebody I knew was a big Beach Boys guy, was like, Brian Wilson had all these great ideas, and there are a lot of great ideas on SMiLE sessions. So I actually checked that out first.
Yeah.
And it slowly worked its way into my everyday listening. And I started considering this thing an album. And in my brain, I was like, all right, I'm consuming this as a finished product, but of course it's not.
Right.
So I'm kind of in this awkward strata of really considering, my knee-jerk reaction is to consume it as a finished product when it obviously isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was that like for you, knowing that like you're digesting this album? Because I've been the same way with it since I first heard it. Like I know it's unfinished, but it plays like an album. So even though there are
Yeah.
songs that were meant to have lyrics that didn't have lyrics, or bits of music that never really found their full form, what's that feeling like for you? Does it feel like you're missing something, or does it feel like you appreciate it for what it is?
You know what? It doesn't feel like I'm missing something. Even though that analytical part of my brain that I use on Vinyl Monday is like screaming at me, telling me not to consume this as I would a studio album, it just feels natural with the flow of how the SMiLE sessions were assembled.
Yeah, that's interesting. So have you gone back to hear Brian Wilson present SMiLE since then?
I think I've listened through it a few times, not completely unbroken. I've
Yeah.
listened to portions of SMiLE sessions and then gone for the Brian Wilson Presents SMiLE versions from
Yeah.
those.
That's really cool you went that way because like I think did I hear SMiLE sessions first? I can't remember. I think I did. I think I got into it around the same time because like at that time like Brian Wilson Presents SMiLE had just come out. So I may have heard both around the same time. I can't remember now. But with the album itself, what is your biggest takeaway from it? Because the myth, the lore, the legend of SMiLE is there. But then there's also the music. At the end of the day, they were just making an album. They weren't sitting there going, "Well, this is the best thing that's ever going to happen."
Yeah.
It's like, what's kind of your takeaway with the Legend of SMiLE? Do you subscribe to it? Do you fall into it down that rabbit hole because it's so easy to? So, what's your relationship with that?
It's so easy to get caught up in the whirlpool of the SMiLE lore. And I try to keep myself out of that as best I can to just take the music that we got and appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah,
Um, More, it's not so much a piece of lore as it is a hub for all of these ideas to go. And did these ideas become what they were intended to? No. But do we still have them as this thing? Yes.
yeah. That's cool. I like that outset because at the end of the day, like I mean, that's kind of what I got into with Smile was like you read about it in books and stuff back in the day, and you read about this, oh, this album that never happened. Wow, I
But
put all this work into it.
for the longest time, it just wasn't out there. It didn't
Right.
exist.
And like I remember when they put out the Smile box set, I was like, I can buy Smile? Okay, cool. Like this is very weird to be able to like hold that thing. It's like so weird. Um, which is great because I think for a lot of people, I feel like the legend doesn't die with the box. I feel like it grows even bigger because you can spend that thing is like there's like 8,000 CDs worth of heroes and villains alone on that thing, so it's a lot to dig into.
Right.
What are your favorite moments on Smile? Do you have any favorite songs, or what's kind of your takeaway from that?
Gosh, favorite finished songs, I would say that SMiLE Sessions version of Good Vibrations.
Ooh, yeah.
I heard that the first of all of the SMiLE Sessions material. I
Ooh, that's
started at
cool.
the end. Um, so I didn't realize that there were so many callbacks to other SMiLE songs on SMiLE Sessions Good Vibrations. So when
Yeah.
I went back and listened to all of the SMiLE Sessions, by the time I got to Good Vibrations, I was like, they did the thing. They did the thing from all the way back there. That's so fun. It was exciting.
Yeah. I feel like there's elements of Smile that are almost rock opera-ish because they have so many callbacks. I mean, like you think of like Tommy, they do callbacks on that constantly. Um, so it's kind of cool to have that. I don't think they even subconsciously or consciously knew what they were doing with. Well, maybe they did. I don't know. They never really talked
I
about that.
Yeah, I also unironically love vegetables.
That song rules. Yeah.
I sing that to myself an embarrassing amount when I'm cooking. Um, do you like worms? Great. Love
hmm
it. Was just listening to that actually.
So
And
good.
as for the little incidental moments, the sort of fragments of things that didn't work their way into the track listing,
Yeah.
falls into a piano. I just think that little skit is so cute.
That's
I
fun.
don't know what it was supposed to be or where on this thing it was supposed to go, but it's adorable.
That's I like that you brought that up because there's so much humor that was involved in that era for Brian, and it's cool to see him like play that out with the guys as they're recording just for fun, just to see kind of what happened. Um, so my favorite game is the What If game with the Beach Boys. And what do you think? Because we got so many great albums after Smile collapsed. We got Friends and Sunflower and Surf's Up and all these great albums. They probably wouldn't have happened if Smile came out. So what's your kind of vision of what would have happened if Smile did come out?
See, I try not to pour too much thought into that because then you just get sucked in. Although coming up with alternative histories is fun. I wonder what would have become of a completed 1967 release of Smile. Um, there's really two realms that would have been consumed in with like other people who made music and music listeners
Yeah,
who did not also make music.
yeah,
With Pet Sounds, there were two very different responses from those two groups. From people who were making music, Pet Sounds blew them away. I
yep.
feel like a finished 1967 Smile would have done that. And gosh, it would have been even weirder for like the Beach Boys fan base that was still grappling with Pet Sounds, was still grappling with this shift. I really don't know what that response would have been like, or if it would have been welcoming at all. There are
Yeah,
some ideas on SMiLE Sessions that are pretty out there for the time.
yeah.
Um, so I wonder if it would have faded into obscurity and then had a huge comeback.
Oh,
I think that might have happened had a completed SMiLE been released on time. Um, I would have loved to see that. This sort of totally off the wall underdog sprawling record be beloved so many years later for how delightfully wacky it is. I
yeah,
love stories like that. So
absolutely.
in my perfect universe, in my perfect world, that's what became of SMiLE.
I can dig that. I like that story too, where records have their due much longer after it came out. And the first thing I think of
Yeah.
is like Pinkerton by Weezer or something. It completely flopped when it came out, but it grew a humongous fan base years later. Um, and it's you make a good point about contextualizing it, like when it came out, because you gotta remember, like only a handful of months earlier, they put out Barbara Ann as their single,
Yeah.
and then like a year later,
Hope
they're
John
writing
B
like
was the single off Pet
right,
Sounds.
right. It's wild that like if you were like 15, 16 years old buying, oh, I got California Girls, I can't wait to see them come out with next year. Oh, this album has a song called Do You Like Worms on it? Like, what the hell is this? Like, it would be kind of a trip if you weren't ready for it, because nothing sounds like SMiLE. Nothing sounds like it. So in their discography, like, or in, yeah, I guess in their discography, where do you kind of put it? Is it in your top 10 of favorite Beach Boys things, top five? Is it even in your top 10? Like, where would you kind of list it in your favorite Beach Boys records?
I would throw it in my top five.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would
Even
beat it?
um as off kilter as Surf's Up is, um, I feel like Surf's Up is up there. Of
Cool.
course, Pet Sounds.
Yep.
I like Holland. I like Sunflower.
All classics. And that's the
Yeah,
thing,
sort of.
like,
I sort of off the beaten path Beach Boys does interest me. So
yeah,
going back to that alternate history, if SMiLE came to fruition, it would maybe be the off the beaten path Beach Boys that I would kind of latch onto.
yeah. So I'm guessing you've heard Smiley Smile, the one that did come out. Um,
Mm, I've brushed
what,
through it.
yeah, what are your thoughts casually on that one?
I mean, it does have some bright spots, but you can, I can tell from my perception, it feels kind of cobbled together.
Yeah,
Um, in a, I won't say in a less charming way because that's not the name, that's not the word I'm looking for
yeah,
when comparing it to, say, a SMiLE Sessions, but for some reason, it just hasn't grabbed me the way the Sessions have.
yeah.
However, I will say I love that album art. I feel like Pet Sounds should have gone in that vein for the album art. With that Exotica influence on Pet Sounds, having something a little tropical would have been fun.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I can totally dig that. Yeah, okay. That's sweet. I mean, speaking of the artwork, I mean, what do you think of the album cover? The thing is, do you think it matches the music of Smile?
It does and it doesn't.
Yeah,
It doesn't match my favorite moments on the record, but it matches some of the most charming moments. It's I look at the album art and I hear vegetables.
yeah,
It's this it feels very placid, feels very homey and
yeah.
peaceful. It feels like a Richard Scarry book
I love
with
that.
the bugs driving around little fruit cars. I feel like SMiLE Sessions art that shop front exists in that universe.
Ah, okay. Okay. I see where you're going there. Because I've always been
They
confused with the album cover. It's like, all right, they're at a shop, but like the album's about like traveling across America. And I'm like, oh, I guess you hit a couple stores along the way.
it was a
But
stop along the way in your Apple car
right.
or your like green pea car or whatever you drive. I don't know.
In Brian Richard Scary Town.
Yeah.
That's funny. Um, that's cool. I mean, the last question I'll ask you is about touring. And like over the course of the next couple of years, they'd play some of those songs live. They started to do Wonderful and of course Surf's Up when the album came out. Can you imagine a late 60s Beach Boys playing Smile live, or do you think any of it would have come across with their touring group at that time, or do you think it was almost too complicated, or what do you kind of see with that?
I don't see in 67 bands weren't latching onto the idea of performing their whole albums live yet. That doesn't happen until The Who with Tommy.
Yeah,
So they would have probably, you'd have to pick and choose certain numbers, like perform your Surf's Up, perform your Good Vibrations as your last song, maybe Plymouth Rock, your like silly number. Um, but it would be so hard to pick SMiLE Sessions songs for a set list that would be representative of the album. I feel that's really important when you're assembling a set list. It is to choose songs that the fans like, choose the songs that you like, but also choose what's representative of the body of work you've just put out.
Yeah,
So I feel like you run into a serious problem there with SMiLE. Yeah.
that's a good point. Um, it would have been a real wacky set list because I know it's 67. They even brought back surfing once in a while. It's like to imagine them playing surfing and then playing like, yeah, like, vegetables or something. It's a weird balance of two different worlds. Um, what else would you have to say about SMiLE? Like, what's kind of your overall takeaway from it? Like, where do you think it stands in terms of the 60s music and music history?
Music history wise, it's an interesting reference point um, to what's sort of going on with this huge American group behind the scenes that we don't see for a long time after. It's this interesting time capsule into a really specific time of making music and of how Brian was thinking of music, how he was consuming music. He had such a wide array of influences. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
Um, so to see how an artist like that kind of mushes all of those influences together, of course, the past Beach Boys works, how those come into play.
Mhm.
Gosh, it's a really cool chapter in music history. It's a cool chapter of history of what was going on in 67.
What a year.
It was totally, things were totally going psychedelic. And then you have this thing that is rooted more in Americana. And we don't see Americana seeping into popular music until probably the country rock thing,
Yeah,
Laurel Canyon, that happens in Laurel Canyon.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so
Jeez.
I haven't thought of that until you asked that question. That this is just so it's so delightfully different. I think
Yeah,
that's the summary of what I feel about SMiLE Sessions. It's delightfully different.
that's a great way to put it. I mean, we've all heard so much music over the years, and obviously having both of us having grown up after that album was made, many, many years after it was made, we can contextualize everything. But like to have been there at the time, it must have been so crazy to wait for this thing to come out. I feel like you were in the circle with them like recording it.
Yeah.
Um, and just knowing that they didn't play Monterey Pop Festival that year when they got invited to, it's like another missed opportunity right there because music changed overnight with that one. So it's like, imagine missing that.
Okay, but it's hilarious imagining touring Beach Boys performing their material. God only knows what I'd be without you. And then you have Jimi Hendrix lighting a guitar on fire at the same show. Oh, what an alternate history that is.
It would have been so far out to have been at that concert. The Beach Boys were there. I mean, God. I mean, they were on the bill. Like they were on like the voting committee to have people like to choose the bands that would play. And then Brian was like, "Nah, let's not do it." And who'd have thunk? I mean, hindsight being what it is, but another what if story in the Beach Boys
Yeah.
chapter, to the chapter of the Beach Boys story, I should say. Um, Abby, thank you so much for being here and for doing this little SMiLE overview. Everyone who's watching, give her channel a follow, Vinyl Mondays, or is your channel? It's called Abigail Devoe on YouTube.
It's called Abigail Devoe.
Okay,
But if you type in the search bar Vinyl Monday, all my videos will show up.
excellent. I'll put a link below so people can click on that as well. But Abby, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was super fun.
Awesome.
I liked I like the choose your own adventure Beach Boys history that we went on.
It's a very easy rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.